G'day, it's Pete here, and today I wanted to look at AI and how it relates to bridge, but not in playing bridge and trying to beat us, but actually in teaching bridge. There's a new thing called ChatGPT, which is like a super smart computer program that can understand and respond to language like a human would. It's been trained on heaps of text, so it can have a conversation and answer your questions. So it's not just like searching up answers, but it's generating its own stuff. And I wanted to see how good is that at actually teaching bridge or different bridge concepts, because usually I find most AI things are a little bit lacking in bridge, but I wanted to give it a review and check it out. So let's jump in and take a look at what ChatGPT can do. If you want to check it out yourself, you can check it out at this link. Or just Google ChatGPT. It's free to use and really, really interesting. But the first one that I wanted to see is how would it actually explain bridge? So I wanted to say, hey, in under 100 words, how can you explain the card game bridge? It said, bridge is a trick-taking card game played with a standard pack of 52 cards, played by 4 players in 2 partnerships with partners sitting opposite each other. The game consists of a series of rounds called tricks in which each player plays a card. The highest of the suit led wins the trick. The object of the game is to take the most tricks and score points based on the cards played in the tricks won. Points are also scored for holding certain high cards and satisfying certain conditions during the play, such as winning the last trick with the lowest card of the suit. The game is won by the partnership that reaches a predetermined number of points, usually 100. Now, I think this is like an interesting thing here. So it actually starts off decently well, and then it talks about winning the last trick with the lowest card in the suit. Never heard of that before. So it sometimes makes it up its own stuff. It also says points are also scored for holding certain high cards, which is not the case in what most people, the format of bridge most people play. Like duplicates and imp scoring. But in rubber bridge, you can get bonus points for having a whole run of honors. So that's probably where it's getting that from. And that's also feels like it lines up with the game is won by the partnership that reaches a predetermined number of points, usually 100, which is actually a really interesting thing in how bridge scoring actually evolves. Like, why is the game bonus at 3 no trumps or 4 hearts or 5 clubs? That's because it evolved from like rubber bridge scoring sort of things, where if you just look at the trick value that you get for each of these, as soon as winning tricks reaches 100 points, that's when you get your game bonus. So when in no trumps, you get 40 points for the first trick and then 30 for each other. So 1 no trump, 40 points, and then 2 no trumps, 30, and then 3 no trumps, another 30. You've ticked over 100, bam, you get your game bonus. Or for 4 of a major, it's just 30 points per trick. So 30, 30, 30, 30. You get to 120, you get your game bonus. Whereas for the minors, it's 20 points a trick, and that's the 5 level. So it's got some really interesting things there. I don't think it was a fantastic job, but it's pretty cool. I did ask it to say in under 100 words. That answer there was actually 122 words. So a little interesting thing. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is a brief description of squeezes. And I think this does pretty decently here. It says a squeeze is a tactic in the card game bridge in which a player forces an opponent to discard a valuable card by threatening to run a long suit. There are several types of squeezes, but they all involve making a series of carefully planned plays gradually reduce the number of cards held by an opponent in a particular suit. The squeeze can be used to force the opponent to discard a key card that the squeezing player's partner needs in order to make their contract, or to score additional contracts by forcing the opponent to unguard a higher ranking card. In order to execute a squeeze, the squeezing player must have control of at least 2 suits in which the opponent holds cards and must be able to predict which cards the opponent is likely to hold. I reckon that's a pretty good description of squeezes, so well done, ChatGPT. I then asked it, like, who's been caught cheating? And it really didn't want to answer that. It's not appropriate for me to name individuals accused or convicted of cheating at bridge. So then I got in and said, well, who's the best player in the world? And this is like a really tricky one to answer even as people. So I wanted to see how it did. And its answer is pretty good, but not exactly what I would say. But basically, it said it's difficult to determine it, which is absolutely spot on. But its number one pick, Bob Hammond, that's who I'd pick for the best player of all time. So great pick there. Then it mentions Zia Mahmood and Antonio Cementa. Now, I think both of them are fantastic players. But to me, neither of them are like absolute best of the best. But they're right up there. And I think these are decent suggestions, if not exactly who I would pick. So I'll give ChatGPT a well done there. Pick the person I would pick for the best player of all time, and then name two absolutely fantastic players as well. Next, I quizzed it on how should you evaluate your hand in bridge. I thought I'd go a bit more obscure. So I think it does a decent job here, but what you could see is there's actually something that I think it gets wrong here. So it says high card points and shape and length, suit quality and honors. These are all absolutely tip-top things that you want to be doing to actually evaluate your hand. But if you look at number 2 here, the shape of your hand or the distribution of your cards among the suits, it is also important. Hands with a balanced distribution of cards, such as 4 triple threes, 4 4 3 twos, are generally stronger than hands with an unbalanced distribution. I think this is completely wrong. I would say unbalanced hands are much better. So for me, this is one of its issues is that it can sometimes get things that, like, it will say it as a truth, even though it's not quite there. But it touches on all the points. But I don't think it gets that shape one quite right. And so here, I think this is really useful as a tool that you could use if you wanted to try and teach people bridge and generate content or notes or things like that. But you do need to check it. You don't just take it at its word because it can get things wrong there. Next, I quizzed it on slam bidding. What are some tips for bidding slams in bridge? And it's got look for key cards, consider your distribution, and again, it talks about how balanced distributions are generally stronger, which is, again, just wrong. Use Q-bids, use Blackwood, and then it says use Gerber. But I think it does some pretty good suggestions for bidding slams. Then I also asked it some really, really important questions, such as, what is the beer card in bridge? And it just gets it wrong. It just doesn't know what the beer card is, which is fair because a lot of bridge players don't know what the beer card is. In short, the beer card, if you don't know, is a partnership pact where winning the 7 of diamonds on the final trick, your partner owes you a beer if it wasn't the trump suit. But here it describes it as the beer card is a card that's used as a placeholder or a substitute for a missing card in the player's hand. It's typically a low-ranking card, such as a 2 or a 3, and is used when a player is unable to complete their hand due to a missing card. The beer card is not a standard part of the game and is not included in a standard deck of cards. It's used in some casual or informal bridge games as a way to keep the game moving when a player is missing a card. Never heard of that. No idea where it got that from. But yeah, then I gave it what I thought would be like something you could just hit out of the park, and it says, who won the Bermuda Bowl in bridge? And the Bermuda Bowl is like our world championship event. It's the most prestigious event there is. And then it just gives me this super long answer, which basically just says the United States won like 90% of the Bermuda Bowls and Italy won the remaining 10%. It doesn't list anyone else. And while the USA and Italy have won a lot, other countries have. So this is just factually wrong. When I started, I was like, oh yeah, 1950, USA, Italy. I was like, oh, and wow, that's a lot of the USA winning. When's Italy's big streak? Because like Italy won like 6 in a row or something, like 7 in a row. And it never came. I was like, oh yeah, that's just wrong. Like it doesn't list any other countries. So it can get that a bit wrong. So then I decided, let's give it a bidding problem and actually see how it goes. And here the question is, What would you do next? Your opponents open 3 diamonds, you pass, responder passes, and partner makes a double for takeout, and the next hand passes. What would you bid when you've got 2 spades, 4 hearts, 4 diamonds, and 3 clubs? And no one's vulnerable. So I gave him this hand. What would you bid? ChatGPT gave the answer. It's in there a bit, but basically it says it would bid 4 hearts. Now, this, I think, is an extremely practical bid. It's not actually the winning answer from the poll. The poll actually liked people to pass. But I think bidding 4 hearts is an extremely common and pretty decent option as well that lots of people would actually choose. So I would say I give this a pretty strong pass mark. I'm actually interested to see how it will do on like a whole series of ones, just to see can people outbid ChatGPT. So I thought that would be pretty cool. So overall, I think ChatGPT did pretty good, but it's not just like definitively always right. There are some times where it can get things wrong, but sort of present it as truths. But I think it's really, really useful to look at. And then if you can curate that information just to check what's right or wrong, I think it was a really useful tool to keep out there. It's got some really cool stuff that it can do. But I also wanted to check how close to putting me out of a job it is. So I thought, you know what, let's just get it to name this video. So I asked it how it would name a video where I'm trying to analyze how good it is at teaching the game. And it gave me 5. I liked number 3. And here, this important point at the end, keep in mind ChatGPT is a language model, and its capabilities are based on the input it receives. It can be a good source of information, but it is not an expert in the game of bridge. So it's important to keep that in mind when creating your video and analyzing the performance of ChatGPT. It also recommended to verify the information provided by GPT with other sources. Anyway, I thought this was pretty interesting. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.